A week or so ago, I did a video talking about quality issues that seem to be arising around Omega watches. And to put that in context, what I said was, if Omega ever wanted to catch and pass Rolex, it would have to deal with these issues. Now, the idea wasn't to sort of posit the idea that Omega should, could, or would even want to become the number one watch brand, at least in terms of market penetration, sales value. However, a lot of you responded that way, and that was fine. That was perfectly legitimate. And you raised lots of questions about why would they want to, how would they do it, could they even do it? And I found myself thinking, you know what, I reckon there's a video in that. So I did the video, recorded the voiceover, and came up with 40 something minutes of content. What I've done instead now is taken that and sliced it up into 3 chunks. Part 1, why Swatch might want to do it. Part 2, why Omega could be positioned to do it. And part 3, how Swatch and Omega would actually execute that plan and try and make an assault on the crown. This is part 1. Why Swatch and Omega might even care about assuming the mantle of the number one watch company out of Switzerland. Hi, welcome to Not So Obvious Watches. I'm Pete McConville. As I said in the long intro earlier, this is part 1 in 3 parts about how, why, where, and what would it take for Omega to overtake Rolex as the number one Swiss watch brand in terms of value sold. This is part 1. Why should they even bother? In any discussion about putting Omega in head up alongside or even ahead of Rolex on the watch league table, the first question you have to answer is why? Why is this worth doing? It's not going to be cheap. I would think that there's 3 reasons why you want to do it. The first is that right now the Swatch Group is incredibly exposed at the low end of the market. Longines, Tissot, Swatch, Hamilton, Satina, Mido, CK Watch are all kind of congregated at this 1,300 Swiss francs and below area. The area most at risk of collapse in the near future. That's going to, if that does happen, a lot of Swatch money is just going to vanish into thin air. You need to start, or Swatch needs to start raising the prices, the average prices of those watches. Unfortunately, with brands like Mido and Longines, start doing that too much and you start getting dangerously close to Omega. So Omega then has to move from its 56-ish, 5,800 average retail price and start looking at being 7,500, 8,000, 9,500, and that puts it right into the fight club with Rolex. And fundamentally, if you're going to do that and you know you're going to be stepping into the lion's cage, you may as well get ready to fight it, knowing that that's what's going to happen next. Reason number 2 for why you might want to do it is because right now, the higher end Swatch brands, Harry Winston, Blancpain, Breguet, Glasuta Original, are underperforming badly. And the idea of putting Omega on the top of the tree would really bring some focus to attempts to re-energize, reinvigorate those brands and get them moving, get them pulling their own weight. Because right now, you might argue, what's that got to do? What's the relationship between Rolex watches that are selling at an average price of 9.5 and Blancpain and Breguet watches, which are selling at an average of say 17 to 20,000 Swiss francs? What it comes down to is if you look at the secondary market prices, what you can see is that people are spending Breguet and Blancpain money to buy Rolexes. That's on the secondary market. If you look at the primary market, what you can see is people are doing the same, just indirectly. They're buying, to buy a sub, they're spending the value of a sub and the value of the date just they needed to get on the list. To buy a Pepsi, they're spending that date just and that sub and then perhaps a day date to get the Pepsi. To get a Daytona, maybe they're looking at having to buy a Pepsi and a sub and a day date and a date just and something gold to get on the preferred list for that Daytona. Each of these transactions cost Swatch Group many times across many different areas. If Swatch, by energizing and getting Blancpain, Breguet, Gosuit Original, Harry Winston, pulling their weight, they can suck some of the air out of that. They can take some of the pressure out of the Rolex bubble, and that will then free up, frankly, consumer dollars that might have gone into a date just that someone was buying just to get on a list, and move that across to Constellations and DeVille's, the watch they might actually really want to buy. By setting this strategic goal of putting Omega on top, you give focus to this attempt to energize the high-end brands from Swatch. The final reason I would say is that in the 21st century, winners are the only grinners and losers face potential death. The influence of social media and its kind of normative and informational social influencing results in this snowballing effect where the brand that's in front that gets the most coverage will in turn get more coverage, which will in turn get more clicks, more likes, more stories, more backgrounds, more videos, which in turn will then get more people buying it, and so on and so forth. We see that playing out right now. Rolex isn't doing anything. It's doing this. It's basically making the same watches it's been making for 50 years. It's not making any more watches. It's not bringing out any new technology, and yet it's continuing to pull away. And that process accelerated enormously with the effect of social media. If Swatch doesn't recognize that, take action to address it, then 5 years' time, we're going to be looking at a Rolex that has 30%, 35% of the Swiss watch industry, and we're going to be looking at Swatch Group as a group being 10 to 15%. Having the focus of saying, you know what, we're going to lift Omega, we're going to put it alongside Rolex, we're going to suck some of the oxygen out of that fire, we are going to put ourselves in that space with a program designed to do so, could protect Swatch from some really dire consequences in the long run. So that's why I think maybe it could be worth Swatch making this move and pushing Omega forward. Before I go on, I don't think they will. I don't see that kind of corporate ambition. I don't see that kind of drive and focus out of anyone in the Swatch industry. It's a terrible thing to say, but I think they're all a bit comfortable and everyone's a bit self-satisfied. So I don't think what I'm going to talk about later, I don't think what I just spoke about would bite in the Swatch Group, and I don't think they're going to make a push for this. But you know what? I honestly believe they should, and I just told you why. What do you reckon? Leave your comments below. Love to hear them. I've been Pete McConville. This has been Not So Obvious Watches, and I'll see you later. Bye.